If you're the kind of person who keeps your personal life out of the workplace, who answers good when asked about your weekend and changes the subject, who diffuses personal questions at lunch lightly but clearly, you've probably been called cold, arrogant, someone who doesn't trust anyone. And maybe you've even asked yourself if there's something wrong with you. But here's what no one is saying about you. You're not cold. You're not arrogant. You're not hiding anything you need to be ashamed of. Psychology has an exact name for what you do. And it's not a diagnosis. It's not a problem to be solved. It's a strategy, recognized, studied, and in many contexts, one of the smartest ways to exist within a professional environment. But before giving you that name, you need to understand why it matters and why people who have this pattern are divided into three completely distinct groups. This pattern has a name in occupational psychology: professional compartmentalization. Also known as workplace privacy orientation. It's not a pathology. It's a recognized adaptive strategy. In 1999, Harvard Business School professor Amy Edmondson introduced the concept of psychological safety, the belief that it's safe to take interpersonal risks at work, that you won't be punished or exposed for opening up. And here's what her research revealed. In environments where the safety is low, people drastically reduce what they share about themselves. Not because they're being difficult, but because the environment simply hasn't earned that right. And there's a detail that most people don't understand. Psychological safety isn't automatic. It doesn't exist just because you've been working with someone for months. It needs to be earned, built over time, with concrete evidence that the context is actually safe. Keeping your personal life to yourself at work, then, isn't paranoia. It's the rational recognition of an objective reality. Not every professional environment deserves that level of access. And the people who have this pattern fall into three very distinct groups. Pay attention, because one of them is going to sound exactly like you. The first group is the deliberate protectors. These people made a conscious choice at some point. They observed what happens when personal information enters the workplace. They saw a coworker share something intimate, only to watch that detail circulate as hallway gossip the following week. They saw someone treated differently after disclosing a health issue. They saw vulnerability used against someone, subtly or otherwise, in a performance review, and they made a calculation. Not because they're cold, not because they don't trust anyone, but because they understood something that a lot of people still haven't stopped to realize. Personal information in a professional environment is currency. And you don't spend currency where the exchange rate is uncertain. They aren't distrusting you specifically. They're respecting the context. They're being strategic. There's a massive difference between distrust and discernment. There is nothing wrong with someone who knows how to make that distinction. But not all compartmentalization comes from a calculation. Some people didn't get here through strategy. They got here by structure. The second group is the boundary architects. These people don't compartmentalize out of fear or rational calculation. It's simply how they operate. For them, the professional self and the personal self are distinct identities that coexist without conflict and without distress. They walk into work and activate one version of themselves. They leave and transition into another. No drama, no emotional cost. Naturally. This has a name in occupational psychology: identity compartmentalization. And make no mistake about what this isn't. It's not fragmentation. It's not dissociation. It's not an escape. It's structural clarity. They are people who function better when they keep these worlds separate. Their personal life isn't hidden. It just simply doesn't belong in this specific container. It's like asking why someone doesn't wear running shoes to a boardroom meeting. It's not a secret. It's just that the item doesn't belong in that space. And there's a real advantage to this that few people recognize. These individuals can be fully present at work because they don't carry their personal emotional baggage with them. And they are fully present at home because they don't bring the professional in. It's emotional efficiency. And there's one point that surprises a lot of people. The boundary architect often has a rich personal life, deep connections, and real relationships. They aren't closed off to intimacy. They just know that everything has its place. There is nothing wrong with someone who functions like this. But there is a third group, and this one carries something different from the other two. The third group is the burned and cautious. Let me paint a picture. It was a normal meeting, or a team lunch, and you mentioned something. Something small, you thought. A detail from your life that felt safe to share at the time. And the following week, that detail found its way back to you through a channel that shouldn't exist. In a hallway. In a joke that wasn't really a joke. In a shift in tone that lingered for too long. And something inside you registered, never again. Psychology calls this a conditioned privacy response. Learned behavior following negative reinforcement. And at the nervous system level, this means the following. Your brain doesn't distinguish between a physical threat and a social threat. To the brain, exposure that led to rejection or betrayal activates the exact same neurological circuit as physical pain. Literally. You're not being dramatic. You're being neurological. This also connects directly with what attachment theory, developed by Bowlby and Ainsworth, describes. When contexts of trust violate your perceived safety, the natural result is self-protective distancing, a pattern that may have started long before your professional life gets reactivated in any context where genuine trust is at stake. This isn't weakness. It's survival intelligence. The nervous system doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's not damage, it's data. So, which of the three groups sounded like you? The deliberate protector who calculated the risk? The boundary architect who is just wired that way? Or the burned and cautious who learned the hard way? It might be more than one, but one of them resonated the strongest. And what comes next explains where this came from. Even before your first job, this pattern might have already been forming. There are two paths. The first one starts in the family. Some people grew up in homes where privacy was modeled as normal. Parents who didn't expose family matters to the outside. A tacit understanding that certain things belong inside the house. This pattern sets in early and becomes the person's factory default. It wasn't explicitly taught. It was just lived, day after day, until it became the default mode. Others grew up in environments where opening up emotionally had real consequences, where vulnerability was interpreted as weakness, where what you revealed could be twisted later on, even by people who were supposed to be safe. The nervous system learns early, exposure equals risk. The second path is the formative professional experience. The first time, personal information was weaponized in a workplace environment. It might have been a small detail, it might have been something bigger, but it was enough to rewire the pattern. The crucial thing about these two paths is that both lead to the same psychological outcome. The nervous system learns that selective disclosure equals safety. It's not a pathology. It's an adaptation. You were calibrated by real experience. You're not broken. Think about what that really means. You didn't wake up one day and decide to be a private person. You were shaped by concrete situations, by real people, by context that taught you that not every place is safe enough for you to be whole. And your nervous system, which is extraordinarily intelligent, registered that lesson. It recorded it and started applying it. Let that sink in for a second. You weren't born private. You learned to be. And you learned because at some point it worked. But the question no one asks, and the one that actually matters, is different. There's a fundamental difference between privacy and secrecy. Privacy is the intentional management of your personal information. You decide what you share, with whom and when. It's an active choice, an expression of autonomy. Secrecy implies shame. It implies that there's something that needs to be hidden because it would cause damage or judgment if it came to light. That's not what most private people carry. They are radically different things, and society often confuses the two. There's also an equally crucial difference between a boundary and a wall. A boundary is permeable and chosen. You decide what comes in what context, and at what moment. It protects without isolating. A wall is driven by fear. It's absolute. Nothing gets through. No one gets in. And you end up alone on the inside without realizing it. The private person at work, most of the time, has a boundary, not a wall. They share with certain people in certain contexts on their own terms. They call you cold, but you're not cold. You're discerning. They call you distant, but you're not running away. You're managing. They call you closed off, but you're not closed off to everyone. You're open to those who have earned that space. And now I need to ask you directly, is your silence at work a boundary, or is it a wall? Is it a choice, or is it a cage? Because there is a real difference between the two. And only you know the answer. Think of it this way. Do you open up to the people who have earned your trust outside of work? Do you have real conversations, real moments of connection with someone in some context of your life? If so, you have boundaries, not walls. You're private, not closed off. But if the pattern has extended to all your relationships, if no one seems to truly know you anywhere, if loneliness creeps in even when there are people around, that's a different sign. And it deserves careful attention, not judgment. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not cold. You're not arrogant. You don't have a fear of intimacy as a factory defect. You learned in very specific and very real ways that certain contexts require certain levels of protection. And that learning isn't weakness. It's wisdom that your nervous system acquired when it needed to. Keeping your personal life out of work is not a character flaw. It's not emotional immaturity. It's an adult, informed choice. And in many environments, the smartest one you can make. You don't need anyone's permission for it. But if you need to hear it from someone, you have it. Cold is the label people use when they can't easily access you. Distant is what they call you when you don't perform openness for someone else's social convenience. Trusts no one is what they say when they don't realize that your trust has clear criteria, not a lack of it. You are none of those things. You are discerning with what is yours. And that, when it comes from a place of conscious choice, isn't shutting people out. It's emotional intelligence in action. And you're not alone in this. There is a silent group of people who operate exactly like this, who build deep connections, but on their own terms, with the right people, at the right time. You belong to this group. You are allowed. If this resonated with you, leave a comment. Tell me about a time you chose silence at work, and it was the right decision. I read them all. Protect your peace.